Unbelievable transformation. Billionaire's son discovers love after shocking accident with Maid. Ethan stared at the metallic stars reflected in his extravagant chandelier. The opulence of his surroundings felt suffocating, a gilded cage more than a home. At 24, he was accustomed to fast cars, wild parties, and a lifestyle that spun around his father's legacy. Yet, after a reckless night of racing, a moment's distraction had turned everything upside down. The accident had left him confined to the plush confines of his room, where the sheer luxury amplified the isolation he felt. He groaned slightly as pain shot through his body, the remnants of carelessness, now a prison sentence. As the shadows of night crept in through his floor-to-ceiling windows, a chill crept down his spine. Would he return to the world that thrived on judgment and elitism? Would the whispers of his past life always haunt him? The irony tugged at him. Where he once reveled in foolish abandon, now he clung to the fragile hope that Clara, his father's maid, would tread through his door daily. Their encounters had begun with her tending to physical wounds, but quickly morphed into profound exchanges that shattered the echoing silence. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Ethan's heart raced at the thought of their connection. Clara had this way of grounding him, challenging him to reach deeper into himself. Her resilience and determination sparked something within him. With every conversation, as they discussed his academic pursuits and a surprising new passion for environmental science, he felt himself inch closer to a version of himself he had buried beneath layers of entitlement and fear. Yet, with every moment spent together, an invisible barrier loomed between them, growing thicker with every whispered disapproval he anticipated from the elite circles of his crumbling life. His father's expectations felt like a noose tightening around his neck. Rumors swirled through the lavish parties, and familial pressure crested like a tidal wave ready to crash. Could he risk everything for a connection that blossomed with every shared laugh under the flickering light of his reading lamp? The anguish was relentless. He was entangled in an internal struggle, torn between love and obligation. What would his elite friends think? Would they dismiss him altogether, or worse, view him as unworthy? As he lay there, wrestling with the emerging feelings for Clara, he grappled with the notion of family legacy. Would he cast aside his responsibilities for the chance to explore something real? Reality was now colliding with a dream he scarcely dared to acknowledge. The suffocating opulence of his room became an emblem of his stifling choices, a constant reminder of the life he felt slipping away. Just when Ethan thought he might muster the courage to confront his fears, a shocking revelation hit him. There was a connection between Clara and his family, one that threatened everything he thought he knew. The weight of the truth pressed heavily on his chest, igniting a frenzy of emotions. Panic, confusion, determination swirled violently as he contemplated his life-altering decision. Torn between the loyalty to his lineage and the undeniable feelings for the maid who had opened his eyes, he faced an uncertain future. With Clara hanging in the balance, a heart he yearned for amid the chaos of his past. The days blurred into one another, each marked by the persistent rhythm of discomfort and introspection. Ethan's isolation transformed him into a spectator of his own life, observing the world beyond his gilded prison while he battled the tornado of emotions swirling within. Conversations with Clara became the only thread connecting him to humanity, her laugh a lighthouse guiding him through his stormy seas. But each joyful exchange also carried the weight of unspoken truths. His growing affection collided violently with the looming specter of his family's expectations. The new bond they forged was fragile yet exhilarating. Clara invited him to explore ideas beyond his previous realms, igniting excitement within him that he hadn't felt in years. Discussions on sustainability, climate change, and the intricate balance of nature opened up avenues of thought that stirred a deep passion for environmental science. For the first time, he imagined a life where he could step away from his father's shadow, becoming an advocate for change rather than a passive heir to privilege. However, shadows loomed. Thoughts of the connection he had unearthed between Clara and his family nagged at him, digging into his conscience like a thorn. What if her presence was more than the sanctuary he envisioned? What if she held a key to revelations meant to stay buried? Every fleeting moment of joy spent with her was undercut by the anxiety that lurked at the edges of his mind. He decided it was time to confront Clara, to peel back the layers of secrecy that cloaked their budding relationship. He knew the risk. In many ways, he stood at the precipice of a chasm, daring to leap toward an uncertain future. As he pushed himself up from the plush confines of his bed, determination coursed through him. He would need to either embrace this burgeoning relationship or distance himself for the sake of his family's prestige, a bitter choice that spiraled within him, refusing to let go. "Clara," he called out as she entered his room, her presence bringing an instant surge of warmth. She paused, eyes bright with curiosity. "Ethan, I brought you some tea," she said softly, a small smile playing at her lips. "Thought it might brighten your day." "Thank you, but I need to talk to you about something important," he replied, his voice steadier than he felt. Her expression shifted to concern, and she set the teacup down, stepping closer. "What's on your mind?" "It's about us, about our connection and everything." He hesitated, the weight of his words pressing against his chest. "I found out there's a history between you and my family, and I can't ignore that anymore." Clara's eyes momentarily reflected a mix of emotions, surprise, apprehension, but the moment quickly hardened into something resolute. "Ethan, it's complicated. There are things about my life and your family that you don't understand," she said, her voice steady but quiet, as if the very subject required careful handling. The terrain between them became treacherous, and Ethan's gut twisted. Was he ready to illuminate the darkness that surrounded her past? The dilemma loomed larger than he expected, and the air thickened with unspoken words and unresolved tension. "What do you mean?" he pressed, conviction overpowering uncertainty. She drew in a breath, the resolve in her stance wavering just enough for him to notice. "If we're going to pursue this, you have to be prepared for the truth. It's not just about you and me." Those words hit him hard. His heart raced, pounding with urgency, as he considered the implications of whatever revelations lay ahead. A push toward transparency risked everything he had begun to cherish. He felt the walls of his life closing in again. As Clara opened her mouth to speak, Ethan realized he was teetering on the edge of another revelation, one that could change everything. "What have you been hiding?" The question hung in the air, electrifying, as Clara's face paled. He knew in that moment the door to his future was about to swing wide open, and whatever lay beyond it could either serve as salvation or seal his fate. Clara's silence stretched out like an eternity, and the room seemed to constrict around them. Ethan's heart thudded in his chest, fueled by both anxiety and the belief that truth would set them free. He watched her grapple for words, each second stretching the tension thin. Would this brutal honesty unwrap the layers of deceit, or would it plunge them deeper into confusion? "We can't just brush over this," Clara finally managed, her voice trembling slightly. "My background, my family, it's not what you think. I come from a different world, one that your family didn't just overlook, they obliterated it." Ethan felt as if he had just been plunged into icy waters, the chill all-consuming. Memories of his upbringing, filled with privilege and expectations, began to slip through his fingers. He yearned to understand Clara better, to align himself with her in this moment. What was your family like? Clara took a deep breath and squared her shoulders. My father worked for your family, Ethan. He was the groundskeeper, the one who took care of this estate. And my mother, well, she was a maid. The vulnerability in her eyes momentarily shattered him. He wanted to pull her into his arms, but knew they were at a pivotal crossroads. How could my family have done that? His voice was barely a whisper. Why didn't I know? Because your family ensured that their world was out of sight. They've built a prosperous kingdom, but at a cost, destroyed lives in the process, she said, her words laden with pain and anger. People like us aren't meant to mix with your world. Ethan's mind raced. The revelation crashed against his previously unwavering beliefs about loyalty and privilege. A flicker of guilt ignited within him. It illuminated the naivete he had embraced thus far, a stark contrast to the realities Clara had endured. "What does that mean for us?" he asked, nearly cringing at the words. He felt like a foolish child clinging to toys while the adults spoke of the weight of reality. "It means we have to make hard choices," she replied, a determined glint in her eyes. "Flinging ourselves into this feels reckless with everything at stake. If we pursue this and it doesn't work out, or if it does and your past catches up to us," he interjected, a knot forming in his stomach. They stood in slow silence, the tension morphing into a coiled spring of possibility and dread. Ethan felt clutch at his core. It demanded truth, a reckoning that couldn't be avoided any longer. "Can we at least try?" He felt desperate, almost pleading. "What we have is different. It feels real." Clara's gaze softened, and for the briefest moment, he saw the hope he felt mirrored in her own eyes. Yet he noticed her hesitation, the shadow of her history crossing her features. "That might not be enough, Ethan. It might never be enough." "No one can dictate how I feel," he protested, frustration sharpening his tone. The edges of his words cut through their haze of uncertainty. "I know that," she replied, her voice low and fierce. "But emotions don't pay the bills. They don't shield you from judgment or scrutiny." Ethan stood resolute, questioning the confines of his upbringing. His family had provided him extensive privileges, yet here he was, ready to fight against the very ideals they had instilled in him. "What do we have to lose?" Ethan asked, his voice steadier this time. Clara looked away for a moment, allowing the weight of their precarious situation to marinate in silence. Then she met his gaze again, and he could see the flicker of rebellion contained within her brown eyes. "Your place," she finally whispered. He clenched his jaw, feeling the onslaught of conflicting emotions coursing through him. He thought about all the dreams he had awakened in himself, and the terrifying notion of abandoning them. Was he prepared to disrupt his world entirely for something so fragile yet so incredibly real? "Yes," he said, as conviction solidified within. "I'm ready to take that risk." With that declaration, Clara moved forward, resting her hand on his. The warmth of her touch sent shockwaves through him, and he realized the path that lay before them was not yet clear. Yet, for the first time, he felt he had agency, a choice to make his own paths diverge from those paved by his family. As their fingers intertwined, Ethan felt a powerful shift start within him. He wasn't merely a bystander in his life anymore, but in that moment of furious hope, he sensed a rumble of possibility, a small but steadfast whisper warning him that this decision held the power to sever familial ties like a taut string, setting into motion a chain of devastating consequences. The door to his future swung open wider, revealing a world of exciting, unsettling uncertainty. Just as he thought clarity was within his grasp, bitter doubt rushed back. The echoes of his family's expectations clawed at him, desperate to reclaim their hold. What are we really getting ourselves into? The question lingered in the air, heavy with unearned consequences, leaving them teetering over the precipice of a chilling revelation he was not yet prepared to face. Clara's hand felt warm, a contrast to the chilling doubts swirling in Ethan's mind. The world they had just stepped into felt like quicksand, promising both peril and growth. He glanced into her eyes, hoping to find reassurance, but all he saw was vulnerability mirroring his own fear. "What if we fail?" he asked, his voice barely breaking the silence. The weight of the question hung heavily between them, a tangible entity demanding recognition. Clara tightened her grip, grounding him. "Failure is part of understanding who we are, Ethan. We can learn from it, but we can't let it define us." A part of him knew she was right. The only way forward was through the unknown. He felt it, a trembling anticipation coursing through his veins, igniting a sense of purpose. Yet, the echoes of privilege and familial loyalty clawed at his consciousness. Leaving behind everything he had been taught almost felt like betrayal. "I need to figure out my commitment to this," he said, breaking their gaze, seeking clarity in the tumultuous sea of uncertainty. Every choice he had made had been nestled within the expectations of his family, a convoluted web that had begun to fray. He was standing on its edge, but how could he leap without crashing? Clara stepped back slightly, giving him space, a visual reminder that this was his journey as much as it was hers. The realization struck him. He was grappling not only with the survival of their relationship, but with his own identity. "I need to see my life from a different perspective," he confessed softly. Her brow furrowed. "What does that mean?" "I want to know more about your world, Clara. I need to understand everything, your past, your family, the life you had before coming here," he said, searching for an anchor in the storm of uncertainty. His emotions. "If we're going to make this work, I need to understand all aspects." Clara's expression shifted from surprise to contemplation. "You realize that it won't be easy? There are layers of pain, some things I haven't shared yet, because they still hurt. And your family's impact, it's larger than you think." Ethan took a deep breath, steeling himself for the journey ahead. "I want to know. I need to fully grasp what's brought us to this moment, and I want to help you reclaim your story." Her face softened, a ghost of a smile breaking through. "You really mean that?" "With everything in me," he replied, feeling the weight of those words settle into his bones. They were a promise, a commitment forged from fear but tempered with authentic desire. As they began to speak about the pasts they had lived, Ethan felt a gradual shift within him. Each story Clara recounted carved into his understanding of love, resilience, and sacrifice. The room felt charged with emotion, drawing them further together, even as the revelations of hurt splintered the facade of the opulent world he had always taken for granted. Yet, with each response, he found new pieces of himself. As he listened to Clara, shadows of guilt danced in his mind, swallowing him whole. The truth of his family's actions loomed large, and this newfound connection filled him with both hope and dread. "What will happen when I confront them?" he whispered, as the thought formed fully, his parents' faces materializing, promising a world of pressure, tradition, and expectations he was starting to reject. "You have to decide who you want to fight for, the person you've always been, or the one you want to become," she replied. Ethan felt the truth of her words sink in. The fight for his identity was coming. Inevitably, it would lead him down the difficult path of confrontation. The looming unknown painted a brutal picture, one where choices held incomparable weight. "I'm ready to face them," he declared, the weight of conviction fueling his words. Clara's eyes sparkled with approval, and he felt a fierce determination ignite. But as anticipation thrummed in his chest, a new thought materialized, laced with fear. Could he truly wrestle with his family's power and secure the love he had found? The moment of truth was approaching closer than he had anticipated, brimming with imminent decisions. "I'm ready to face them," he declared, the weight of conviction fueling his words. Clara's eyes sparkled with approval, and he felt a fierce determination ignite. But as anticipation thrummed in his chest, a new thought materialized, laced with fear. Could he truly wrestle as his family's power and secure the love he had found? The moment of truth was approaching closer than he had anticipated, brimming with imminent decisions. As they prepared to delve into the history he'd ignored for too long, Ethan's thoughts converged. With everything weighing on the choices he was about to make, he understood one thing firmly. The line of battle would soon be drawn, and he had to decide which side he stood on. The walls around him began to pulse with a new urgency, leaving him with a single, unrelenting question. What will be the catalyst that forces me to confront my family? Ethan stood before the sprawling facade of his family's estate, the air thick with his conflicting emotions. Doubt brushed against his resolve. The very walls that had witnessed countless family gatherings now loomed like sentinels, guarding secrets he had not yet uncovered. Each step he took towards the entrance felt heavy, burdened by history and expectation. He was simultaneously drawn to and repelled by the place that had defined his existence, a gilded cage he was on the verge of breaking free from. As he crossed the threshold, the familiar echoes of laughter and clinking glasses from his family's latest soiree drifted down the hallway. The noise faded away, replaced by a deep silence that mirrored the introspection swirling inside him. He paused, gripping the smooth banister before continuing up the grand staircase. This was more than a mere visit. It was the beginning of a confrontation with a legacy he had never quite embraced. The light streaming through the stained glass windows painted the walls in intricate patterns, an artificial beauty that stung. His heart raced as he approached the door to the living room. Inside would be his parents, poised and ready to assess the depths of their son's potential, perhaps with pride, maybe with criticism. Would they recognize how their vision had shaped him, for better or worse? Would they even care? Ethan hesitated. He thought of Clara and her unwavering belief in him. She had opened a door inside him, a door he'd thought long sealed. The memories of their last conversation surged, a reminder that he could reshape his narrative. Taking a breath, he pushed the door open. "Ethan!" His mother's voice rang out, vibrant yet laced with a hint of surprise. "We didn't expect you today." "Wanted to talk," he replied, his voice steadier than he felt, "about everything." His father looked up from his newspaper, eyebrows raised in curiosity. "Everything? This sounds serious. What's troubling you?" From the periphery, Ethan felt the weight of his family's expectations wrapping around him, tightening against his will. It was suffocating, yet he knew this was his moment to expand. "I feel like I've been living a script," he began, each word like a brick laid in the foundation of his breakthrough. "I need to break it. I want to understand who I really am, outside of our family image. There are parts of my life I've neglected, and Clara, she's been instrumental in that realization." His mother exchanged a glance with his father, a subtle sign of concern. "What do you mean exactly?" she asked, her tone cautious but probing. "Clara, is this about that maid?" The dismissal in her voice tore at him. "Clara is not just a maid, Mom. She's someone who challenges me to look beyond my comfort zone, to question what's right and wrong in our world. She's helped me see how blind I was to the luxury we enjoy, a luxury built on the struggles of others." A taut silence settled on the room. His parents' expressions flickered momentarily, surprise, then anger. He could read the conflict, an internal war of allegiance between their values and the challenge their son posed. "Ethan, you don't understand the ramifications of what you're saying. Our name, our legacy, it's all at stake. his father countered, his voice heavy with authority. But what about my stake? Ethan shot back, realizing the stakes had never been clear to him before. What about my life? I've been drowning in obligations, trying to carry a weight that I can't bear. If I'm going to create a life worth living, it has to be mine, not a replica of anyone else's. Ethan's heart raced in the aftermath of his own words. The room felt charged with a new tension, as if the very air was recalibrating. He had crossed a threshold. There was no going back. His mother's expression softened, but her voice was still sharp. "You're making a huge mistake, Ethan. You're romanticizing a life that is harsh and unyielding." "Maybe," he replied, taking a step closer. "But I want to take the risk. It's a risk for me, and I'd rather embrace the unknown than remain locked in a gilded cage of privileges." The silence that followed felt monumental, not as a void, but as a crucial pause, the moment before storm clouds gathered. The realization blossomed within him. Change wasn't just demanding, it was liberating. As he stood before them, the weight of uncertainty morphed into a feeling of empowerment. Ethan understood that his fight was not just against the past, but for a future that was authentically his own. Yet, deep within, the shadows whispered. The battle was just beginning, the real confrontation looming ahead. In that charged atmosphere, hedging their future, he grasped an undeniable truth. Nothing would ever be the same again. The question now was clear. How would they respond to the declaration of a son ready to redefine their legacy? Ethan felt the weight of silence pressing down on him, an almost tangible force in the air. His parents exchanged uneasy glances, the reverberations of his bold proclamation hanging between them like a fragile glass sculpture ready to shatter. The tension was palpable, and in that moment, Ethan realized that this wasn't just about him. It was a fracture in the very foundation of their family dynamic, a ripple that could alter every relationship within these walls. His father opened his mouth, yet words seemed to fail him. The paper he had held so confidently earlier now lay abandoned on the coffee table, forgotten amid the turmoil. Ethan had expected anger, perhaps an attempt at denial, but this stunned silence was more unnerving than he could have imagined. It was an acknowledgement that something fundamental had shifted. "Ethan," his mother finally said, her voice shaky yet assertive, "you're speaking of change as if it's something simple. You have responsibilities, obligations that come with our name. Think about the family business, the legacy." Obligations. The very word felt like a chain around his heart. Responsibilities he'd never asked for, and a legacy he had never desired. He could feel his pulse quickening, thrumming against the confines of his chest, igniting a fire in him that had long been dormant. "No," he asserted, his voice steady. "It's all I've known, but it's suffocating me. I want to carve a new path, even if it means leaving this place behind." The admission felt like a leap from a cliff, exhilarating yet terrifying. These were deep waters. He was torn between a life of preordained success and the unknown chaos of authenticity. "Clara," his mother continued, the tone of desperation creeping in, "she's not part of your world. You don't know what you're getting into. This is a fantasy, a reckless dream." A flash of anger ignited within him. "You mean a reality, Mom?" Ethan countered, his frustration boiling over. "Clara offers me a lens to see what really matters. How can I navigate life when I've only been taught to stay within this bubble? I'm ready to uncover the truth." Truth. The word echoed in his mind, stirring something profound. What had he really known? The luxury, the privileges, they felt hollow now, an extravagant mask hiding the raw, messy reality of life. Clara represented a world that breathed vitality, not just opulence. And the notion that she was somehow less than him because of her station stung. "Ethan, you can't make rash decisions based on infatuation." His father's voice stormed through the air, cutting sharply into his resolve. "You have a bright future, a guaranteed life of comfort if you just adhere to the family expectations." But at what cost? The fervor in his voice surprised even him. "Have you ever thought about what those expectations have cost me? My happiness, my authenticity. I refuse to continue living a lie." His father's face darkened, frustration etched into the lines of his forehead. "This isn't a game. This is serious business. You can't just throw everything away because you feel challenged. There are consequences to this path you're choosing." Ethan felt his heart race, but beneath the pressure, there was an exhilaration. His desire to confront this was burgeoning within him. He questioned his understanding of consequences if it meant arriving at his own truth. "Maybe it's time to face those consequences, to embrace them. Maybe what I'm choosing is worth more than just comfort," he responded, his voice resonating with newfound clarity. Each word felt like a step up a steep, precarious path, one he was now determined to climb. His mother sat back, her expression shifting from anger to something softer, perhaps concern mingled with regret. "But what of the family, the business? If you leave?" "If I leave, I'd be finally choosing for me," he cut in swiftly, sensing this was pivotal. "The truth is, I'm not afraid of failure. What terrifies me is the thought of remaining stagnant, hidden behind this illusion of perfection. I want more." He paused, taking a breath to steady himself, prepared for the consequences they hinted at. The air was thick with uncharted waters, but he was ready to swim. Embers of determination ignited within his core. As silence enveloped them once more, the potential for confrontation still lingered, heavy and unrelenting. Ethan's blend of fear and exhilaration ignited a deeper revelation. It dawned on him that he was no longer just fighting for his future. He was positioning himself for a revolution that could alter not just their family dynamics, but so much more. What he didn't know was how far this journey would take him, or the lengths his parents would go to fight against the transformation he yearned for. That uncertainty was a quiet thrill. Outside, the wind rustled the trees, hinting at the storms yet to brew. As the tension simmered, Ethan realized that the real test lay ahead. His greatest challenges weren't just here in this moment, but would come from the world he was stepping into, and whether he was truly ready to redefine the legacy he had inherited, or reshape it altogether. Ethan stood at the precipice of his new reality, the weight of his parents' expectations still heavy on his shoulders, but invigorated by a surge of determination. He felt the air shift. The familiar walls of his home, once a sanctuary, now felt like a confining cage. The silence between him and his parents had morphed from suffocating to somehow liberating, as if it had created a void that now begged to be filled with the choices he alone would make. His mind raced with possibilities, challenges, and the omnipresent fear of abandonment, yet embedded within the fear was an exhilarating rush of autonomy. For the first time, he was seizing control of his destiny. Retreating to his room, which had served as his fortress for years, he began to process the meeting, replaying the heated words that had been exchanged. Setting his jaw, he pulled out a notepad and began sketching ideas, dreams his parents would surely deem fanciful. "What does it mean to establish my own legacy?" he wrote. The thought resonated deeply with him. Delving into that question was the first step forward, a move away from obligations and toward self-discovery. The urgency of his need to reassess his identity outside of familial constraints propelled him. The image of Clara bubbled to the surface. She embodied freedom and vitality, attributes he craved yet feared to embrace. Days passed, transforming the initial shock into courage illuminated by clarity. Ethan found himself drawn to Clara, her laughter infectious and her spirit a counterbalance to his apprehensions. He could see the world more vividly through her eyes, colors long muted in his privilege blooming around him. Their conversations shifted from tentative explorations to profound discussions about dreams and aspirations, painting a picture of a future that felt real, one that contrasted with the stark solitude of his old life. Yet, as excitement flourished, anxiety coiled within him. What would his parents think of his budding relationship? Would they confront him again, this time armed with more than mere words? This gnawing uncertainty urged him to devise a plan, one that would liberate him from the perceived weight of his family's expectations while simultaneously nurturing his connection with Clara. One evening, as he sat across from Clara in a bustling cafe, he voiced his plans. "I think I need to create a business, something that means something to me, not just what's expected," he told her, eyes gleaming with newfound ambition. The idea of starting from ground zero, of mixing innovation with authenticity, ignited a passion he quickly penned down. "Ethan, you're not just talking about a project," Clara replied, her gaze piercing through his apprehensions. "You're talking about a life." Her words struck him deep, framing his aspirations in a light he'd never considered. It wasn't merely about making something. It was about the freedom to choose, the courage to follow this path, this authentic life he was claiming. But with ambition came inevitable hurdles. As he shared ideas with Clara, mentoring his vision, he realized he hadn't fully considered the obstacles likely to arise. His parents' potential backlash loomed like a specter ready to haunt his every step forward. Weeks turned into restless nights filled with plans half-formed. His parents had yet to mention his desire for independence again, but he could sense a simmering tension within their household. Something had shifted in him, yet he wanted to present a united front rather than facing them alone. The moment arrived unexpectedly. His father called him into the den, whipping back through emotions bitter and fierce. "You can't possibly think you can leave the family business behind without repercussions," he warned, voice lower than Ethan had ever heard it. Ethan felt his heart race as the stakes rose higher. He was ready to confront them again, but this time armed with a strategy, a series of arguments backed by his burgeoning vision of entrepreneurship that could be distinguished from the family legacy. Focusing on the truths he had discovered about himself, he understood that his quest for authenticity felt like both a privilege and a burden. "This is my life, and I'm ready to navigate the risks," he declared, standing taller than he ever had before. And as he neared the end of his father's speech, he knew the time had come to face not just the confrontation, but the reality of the choices he had made. The family he'd known was never going to be the same, and amidst that uncertainty was an undeniable possibility waiting to unfurl. The time had come to face everything he had set in motion, and there was no turning back. The sun dipped low in the sky, beams filtering through the window, illuminating Ethan's room in a warm glow. His mind buzzed with thoughts and strategies that unfurled like a map to an unknown territory. He'd spent the day sketching business ideas, fueled by the conversations with Clara, and despite the undercurrent of fear, he felt an undeniable sense of purpose. It was during one sleepless night he realized that the risk he yearned to take transcended the idea of starting a business. It was about redefining himself, shedding layers of expectation as one would peel an onion. Each layer brought tears, but also revealed fresher hues of who he truly was. This revelation ignited a fierce resolve in him, pushing aside the doubts that had once clouded his passion. As daylight streamed through his curtains, Ethan began drafting a business plan. He envisioned a platform that connected young entrepreneurs with mentors, a bridge between ambition and experience that could empower people like him. The intricate web of connections stirred something deep within him. He felt alive with potential. But another reality loomed. Beyond his creative sparks, a question itched at the back of his mind. How would he position this venture to his parents? Their ties to the family business still felt like an anchor, holding him down, the specter of disappointment hanging just out of sight. Would they perceive his new path as a betrayal or an escape? Clara brought clarity amidst the chaos. During their next meeting, he shared his concept. It's not just a job, he stressed, eager to frame it as transformative. It's a movement, a way to help people find their own voice. It's important, Clara. She leaned in, her enthusiasm palpable. You can combine your legacy with something that makes you feel free. What if you invited your parents to see the real potential of what you're building? Maybe it's not about confronting them, but involving them in your growth. His gut twisted at the thought. Involving them felt like an act of vulnerability, opening himself to their judgments. Yet it could also be an olive branch. The idea stirred hope within him, a pathway not to confrontation, but to collaboration. As days passed, he prepared for that delicate conversation. He envisioned the syntax of each line he had crafted, balancing respect for their legacy with hope for his future. His heart raced during these rehearsals, the fear of rejection matching his budding excitement. The morning arrived when he mustered the courage to approach them. They were gathered in the living room, their expressions unreadable, and as he stepped into the space, the air thickened with unspoken questions. Ethan reminded himself of Clara's words. It was a step towards his new identity, not a rebellious tear. "Mom, Dad," he started, his voice steadier than he felt. "I want to discuss my idea with you. It's not meant to undermine what you've built. I believe it can enhance our family legacy." They turned to face him, curiosity piqued. His mother's brow furrowed slightly, and his father's eyes narrowed, yet he forged ahead, painting a vivid picture of his vision. The way the golden light filtered through the window brought an unexpected sense of warmth. It felt like a blank canvas ready to be filled. As he spoke, he sensed a flicker of interest from his father, a glimmer of the past ambitions he shared with Ethan. Yet, despite the hopeful trajectory of conversation, tension crackled in the room. Theirs remained a world woven with expectations. Before he reached the end of his pitch, an interruption shattered his concentration. The family business partner, a constant shadow in their dealings, entered without announcement. "Ethan," he said, glancing around, "I couldn't help but overhear. You're thinking of abandoning everything we've built?" Ethan's chest tightened at the hostility, but he held fast. This was a pivotal moment, a chance to assert his identity against ingrained doubt. "No, I'm not abandoning anything," he asserted, meeting the partner's gaze. "I'm building something new." But as the words escaped his lips, he felt an ominous cloud settle within the room. The potential for conflict loomed larger than ever, and he understood that taking this path to personal fulfillment would not come without its own heavy burdens. In that moment, the urgency of advocacy for his vision surged. There was no turning back. But what awaited him on this journey felt uncertain, fraught with resistances that could either forge a stronger familial bond or fracture it altogether. The weight of impending decisions pressed down on him. Would he break free from their expectations and risk everything he ever knew, or would he find common ground amidst diverging paths? Determined to gather support, Ethan knew he had to navigate this unfamiliar terrain with care. The stakes were high, and he couldn't ignore the shadow of his father's expectations looming ever closer. What course would he forge next? The possibility of acceptance danced just out of reach, and with it, his dream trembled with both hope and doubt. Ethan felt the air grow dense with unspoken words, thickening like fog as the family business partner's presence threatened to suffocate the budding dialogue. The room's energy shifted palpably, morphing from curiosity to conflict. Yet he stood firm, determined to hold his ground. "Let's not jump ahead," he said, forcing his voice to remain calm, a veneer he carefully crafted over churning emotions. "This isn't about abandoning, it's about evolving," he reiterated, attempting to anchor the conversation back to empowerment rather than betrayal. His father remained skeptical, arms crossed tightly over his chest, while his mother's concerned gaze flitted between Ethan and the partner, torn between loyalty and worry. The undercurrents in the room electrified the atmosphere. Every second stretched into an eternity. Could he convince them, or was he stepping into a trap woven from years of expectation? Ethan, this is a family business, the partner pressed, his tone sharp. You can't just turn your back on the hard work that's been done. As if the partner's words had ignited a dormant fire, Ethan realized this was no longer merely about sharing his idea. It had become a battle for his autonomy. With every heartbeat, he felt an intensifying urge to claim his rightful place in the conversation, to assert that his vision held merit, potential that could coexist with their legacy. Hard work matters, he replied, meeting the partner's steely gaze. But so does innovation. I want to take the essence of what we have and channel it in a way that transforms lives. The tremor in his voice mirrored an escalating mix of fear and resolve. This was more than a plea for acceptance. It was a declaration of who he was becoming. He caught a glance from his father, a fleeting moment of recognition where shared dreams flickered, hidden beneath layers of responsibilities and obligations. For the first time, he felt the walls between them shift slightly. Vulnerability could be a bridge instead of a chasm. Perhaps we're both working toward the same goal, Ethan suggested, sensing a thin thread of light. We can build a platform that mentors the next generation while also preserving our family legacy. Imagine the impact we could have by bridging established wisdom with fresh ideas. Silence enveloped the room. His words hung in the air, waiting for gravity to claim them. I don't know if that's possible, his father finally spoke, a crack in his stoic demeanor, revealing a hint of uncertainty. This change you want, it's risky. Ethan's pulse quickened. Here lay the crux of the confrontation, a fissure he could exploit. Every worthwhile endeavor comes with risks, Dad, but stagnation can be equally dangerous. As he spoke with mounting fervor, Ethan felt a newfound strength swell within him. The thought of living tethered to someone else's aspirations felt suffocating. Each word was a step away from that identity, a reclamation of his own ambition. Yet, just as momentum built, the partner interjected again. And you think this mentor platform won't dilute what your family has built? The very fabric of the business won't hold together under that weight. Have you thought this through? The question loomed large, forcing him to confront whether he was even close to prepared for such a leap. Yet all he had envisioned was a world where freedom and family could coexist. The potential for fear shifted again, morphing into a deep-seated resolve. This is about more than business. It's about making a difference, building a community, Ethan countered, feeling the fire within flare brighter. If you cannot see that, then we're looking at two different futures. I want you all to be part of this transformation, or at least understand it. The intensity of their expressions barely masked their turmoil, exposing the conflicting loyalties and fears that had long shaped their family dynamics. With breaths held tight, Ethan awaited their response, the minutes teasing out into a tumultuous eternity. Would they see his vision as a threat or an opportunity? But before tension could yield to resolution, the partner's phone buzzed, shattering the delicate atmosphere. It was a stark reminder of the external pressures that often seeped into their familial struggles. Ethan's heart raced again. Not only was he battling family expectations, but now the clock was ticking, and stakes felt impossibly higher. The moment of truth hung tantalizingly within reach, and he could feel it slipping away. The question echoed within him. What cost would he pay to rise above? Ethan stood on the threshold of a new chapter, the atmosphere charged with the weight of his decisions and the echoes of past expectations. The confrontation with his parents had shattered the veneer of complacency he had long accepted, revealing a landscape filled with uncertainty, yet illuminated by the prospect of freedom. As he faced them again after taking a deep breath, he felt less like a child seeking approval and more like a man ready to carve his own identity. "Look," Ethan began, his voice steady, I understand how this affects you both, but this is not merely about the family business. It's about the legacy I want to create. I need you to trust me." The air crackled with unspoken tension as he glanced between their uncertain faces and the business partner's skeptical glare. His mother leaned forward, brow furrowed with concern. "Ethan, trust is built on understanding. We're concerned about the direction you're heading. Are you fully aware of what you might lose? Our family name, your place in the business?" Ethan's heart raced, fueled not by fear, but by an overwhelming sense of purpose. His gaze hardened. For too long he had played the role of dutiful son. "But what about what I stand to gain?" he countered, his conviction surfacing. "I refuse to live as a shadow of what you've created. I need to pursue my passions, to build something meaningful, not just for me, but for the community." The room fell silent. Each word punctured the static air, challenging the status quo they had all participated in so willingly. Ethan could see the struggle on his father's face, a battle against the tide of convention and his own budding respect for his son's ambition. It was in these moments, standing tall despite their apprehensions, that Ethan knew he was truly transforming. Gone was the anxious air. In his place stood a man who had discovered a voice and sought to use it. "I want your support," Ethan added, his voice lower but imbued with hope. "Not in spite of who we are, but because of it. We can adapt and grow together. That's how legacies evolve, through innovation and relevance." The resistance within his father's expression softened slightly, and for a fleeting moment, Ethan glimpsed a flicker of understanding. But then the partner interjected. "This is naive, Ethan. You think it's easy to simply shift the focus of what has worked for generations?" "No, I don't," Ethan replied, his tone firm yet respectful. "But I believe it's necessary. This is an opportunity to lead rather than simply maintain. People are hungry for genuine connection and purpose. We're sitting on a precipice of change." As he spoke, the fire of possibility burned brighter, illuminating both the challenges and opportunities of the future he envisioned. If he could convince his family to embrace even a fraction of his vision, it would forever alter their legacy. His mother finally broke the silence, her voice wavering but clear. "We didn't raise you to be a mere extension of our name. We raised you to think critically and be courageous. If you believe in this, we can try to understand, but you must also be prepared for resistance." Ethan felt a wave of gratitude wash over him. Their tentative acceptance was nothing short of validation, a testament to the woman's nurturing spirit that had shaped his childhood, balanced now with an acknowledgement of his new vision. "But if you're going to do this, we want to be involved," his father added, voice resolute. "We want to know more. This must be an evolution, not a rejection." As their support coalesced around him, Ethan felt the burden of fear lift, embraced instead by confidence. He knew he still had to navigate the complex dynamics of his family, the partner's skepticism, and the expectations that accompanied their last name. But he was no longer alone on this journey. Empowered by Clara's unwavering faith, the grit of his parents' legacy, and the tenacity of his mission, he could finally forge a path where passion intertwined with purpose. Days turned into weeks as Ethan immersed himself in the expansion of his idea. He crafted a content plan for the mentorship platform that emphasized inclusivity, utilizing his family's established connections while simultaneously reaching out to fresh talent. He drew upon past lessons from the family business while marrying those strategies with new visions. Every layer he fragmented from his background revealed another piece of his true identity, an exhilarating journey of self-discovery aligned with action. The new venture blossomed, igniting not only his ambitions, but rekindling the familial bond he thought might fracture. Listening to Clara, meeting with mentors, and presenting their vision to interested parties became a thrill, with every presentation further solidifying Ethan's confidence as an entrepreneur. Amidst this professional success, personal fulfillment took center stage too. With Clara's perpetual support, they explored new avenues together, making an impact on environmental awareness while cultivating a love grounded in mutual respect and ambition. The decision to step into the open, unshackled from old expectations, transformed their relationship into one forged by shared ideals deeper than mere affection. Ultimately, the catalyst for change had always rooted within him, waiting for the moment he chose authenticity over obligation. As he stood before the world his work had begun to create, Ethan felt a wave of pride swell within him. No longer simply the billionaire's son, he became a pioneer of change, grounded in hard-earned knowledge and authentic credentials, the transformative bridge between past legacy and a purpose-driven future. This was a triumphant moment of realization. He had proven to himself that the path to fulfillment resided not in the shadows cast by his lineage, but in the light of choices made through courage. He had not merely conquered uncertainty, but embraced a future he forged with unyielding resolve and unwavering love. There was still so much to learn and much more to create, yet he stood firm, knowing he had transformed into who he was meant to be. Now, as the days unfolded ahead, he could only marvel at the journey, one filled with new beginnings, unwavering purpose, and a commitment to carving an extraordinary legacy. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment their reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting this channel through these actions.